Hello, and welcome to Inventors Helping Inventors. I'm your host, Alan Beckley, inventor of the Wonder Wallet. If you're an inventor searching for proven ways to make money with your invention, if you dream to see your product selling in stores everywhere, you've come to the right place. There's no better place to get help than from experts, inventors who've already achieved success. Every week, I interview successful inventors, asking them the questions you want to know. Tune in to learn from the experts so you can get your invention out of the tank and into the bank.
Something is too complicated or takes too much time, a lot of times it's not utilized because of that. And so when I designed this product, I specifically designed it to be very fast and easy and not complex. So it adds value to the people who are in the healthcare industry rather than making it a deterrent that takes up too much time or is too complicated or ultimately is less efficient.
What's the most difficult part of inventing? It's not the creative process of inventing a new product. It's not even navigating the patent process. The most difficult part is marketing your product so you can make money from it. If you're like most inventors, you love inventing and creating, but you hate marketing. Maybe you'd prefer to turn the marketing of your product over to an agency that claims to have helped hundreds of inventors. Unfortunately, that's expensive and always ends badly. Here's the good news. Marketing is a learnable skill, and I can teach you, empower you to market your own invention through a proven, effective process. Sound intriguing? If you're a serious inventor who's ready to learn how to license your invention to get it to market sooner rather than later, my product to market training could be right for you. Through 7 hours of one-on-one in-depth training, I will show you how to create a clear, concise, compelling marketing message for your product. I'll show you how to use a new AI agent to find 30 or more companies in just minutes that could be great partners to license your product. Then we'll use another AI agent that looks at your top 10 companies and then finds names, titles, email addresses, and LinkedIn profiles of up to 100 contacts. Armed with all this, I'll work with you to design a step-by-step process for you to use to reach out to companies and contacts with your clear, compelling message. Then you're ready to begin contacting the companies yourself. I'm planning to work with no more than 2 inventors through the product to market training. If this sounds like something you'd like to explore, to finally get your product off the sidelines and into the market, let's talk and see if this program is a fit for you. Just email me at alan@alanbeckley.com and put in the subject line, Product to Market. I'll reach out to you and schedule a time for us to talk. Again, just email me at alan@alanbeckley.com. Put Product to Market in the subject line. I look forward to talking to you. Welcome to episode number 614. Today, I interview James Siedlack. James Siedlack is a registered nurse, clinical consultant, inventor, and entrepreneur with more than 30 years of hospital-based experience, including over 2 decades in the operating room. Born in Ohio, he pursued a career in nursing after high school and built a career that bridges frontline clinical care with medical product innovation, helping companies translate engineering into practical clinical use. He's developed medical products currently in commercial use and remains active in the OR while consulting with surgical device companies during expo season. A father of 3, James is passionate about inventing, self-improvement, mentoring others, and helping make healthcare and the world better. Outside of work, he is active in Toastmasters International and enjoys encouraging others to keep learning and growing. You'll want to listen to this entire interview where James shares how he discovered in the operating room that whereas operating table has a safety belt for the patient, but there's no restraints to ensure an arm or leg doesn't fall off the table. So he invented StopGuard to solve that risk in the OR. He also shares how he pitched his product to non-clinical people who had never been in an OR. So he had to paint a vivid picture of the problem and how StopGuard is the solution. And finally, he believes that inventing is a marathon, not a sprint, and that developing good long-term relationships with manufacturers matters more than pushing any single product trying to get a yes. Now let's get right to our interview with James Siedlack. James Siedlack, it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast with us today.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here, Alan.
James, can you share a bit of your background with our listeners? Where did you grow up and where did you go to school and what did you do before you became an inventor? Could you share that with us?
Sure, Alan. So I originally grew up in Ohio, moved to Florida near the Tampa Bay area when I was around 12, 13 years old. And honestly, probably always been an inventor. My family were industrial workers. My grandfather was a welder. My father worked for the phone company. We are always building and fixing things around the house. And I think that's where I've got my mechanical inspiration and love of inventing things. So at that time, I wasn't really know what I was going to do in life and went on to work at a grocery store and realized there's probably more to life than that. I know I enjoy science. I enjoyed helping people and fixing things. So that led me into a career in the healthcare field. I went on as an LPN, then got my RN, got my bachelor's after that, and then been in healthcare ever since.
Thanks for sharing that story. And I've commented frequently on the podcast that I find, and one reason I particularly like to ask this question is for most inventors, there's something they can track back to childhood that kind of planted the inventor DNA, so to speak, in their system. Quite a few people who grew up on farms and ranches were very much inventor types because they were a ways away from the city and they had to devise a lot of solutions to things. So there's a lot of interesting stories around that, but it seems like it generally starts in youth, the inspiration that drives them as an adult to become an inventor.
That's a good point. We grew up, we did live in the country. We didn't have a lot of money. And so if we wanted things as kids, we essentially made them. I know at one point I was interested in juggling and we didn't have juggling rings. There was this long before Amazon or any store, and I didn't drive at the time. So it was a matter of going down to the basement and making what you wanted. And it's kind of how we lived. And that is where a lot of the inspiration came from. And just there's a way to get it done and there's a way to do it and the way to figure it out. And that definitely was the foundation of my inventing career.
Thanks for sharing that. So, Jim, you have an extensive medical background and expertise that spans working over 30 years in hospital-based care, including over 22 years in the OR operating room as a registered nurse. From your OR experience, you've developed two inventions to both improve patient safety while maintaining cleaner workflows. One of your inventions, the StopGuard, seems to solve a problem that it seems no one else ever addressed. Can you briefly describe the StopGuard? How does it work? What does it look like? And also, what is the key problem that it solves in the OR? Could you share that with our listeners?
Sure. Yeah. Like you said, I've been in the healthcare industry for 30 years. I worked in IC for a little while and transferred to recovery and then ultimately into the OR. And I think that was a great fit for me because the operating room is a very mechanical place. And so working there every day, you see a lot of challenges and a lot of areas that could use some improvement. And the product that I came up with, StopGuard, and essentially, if you think about a hospital stretcher, there's side rails on the stretcher, and the side rails are always up to protect the patient from falling off of the stretcher, maybe have a limb coming off. In the operating room, there is no appliance that functions in the same way. We have a safety belt that kind of helps keep the patient on the table, but there's always a risk of a limb or arm falling off the table, or even a patient coming off the table. And it's a high risk environment. Patients are often sedated, they're confused, they're coming out of anesthesia, going into anesthesia. It's a new environment. A lot of times they haven't had anything to eat for a while, so they're a little bit fuzzy. So there's a little bit of a risk there. And this product essentially acts as a side rail to an operating table. It acts as a second layer of protection, along with, say, the safety belt that we currently use. And this prevents legs or the patient from sliding off the bed in a non-contact way. So we have the same protection, but it utilizes a way of keeping them safe without much extra work. I think you had asked why something hasn't came about. And I think in most industries or in life, a lot of times you don't recognize a problem that you deal with every day. You just take it for granted, or you come up with a workaround. And in this instance, there's a lot of workarounds that we've come up with in the industry that aren't necessarily the best practice, but they kind of down and dirty ways that work. And so sometimes it's hard to think out of the box because the way we've always done it is the way we've always done it. And so I was able to find an opportunity there that works better and it's a much safer and more efficient way. And I think too, sometimes the products that are made for the medical industry are over-engineered and they're made by people who aren't actually in the field that are practicing every day. And so there are some devices out there, but they're very complicated. And if something is too complicated or takes too much time, a lot of times it's not utilized because of that. And so when I designed this product, I specifically designed it to be very fast and easy and not complex. So it adds value to the people who are in the healthcare industry rather than making it a deterrent that takes up too much time or is too complicated or ultimately is less efficient.
Thanks. That makes a pretty clear picture of, for sure, the problem it solves. And also, you addressed that it's standard for people in industries, all sorts of industries, to be so used to just doing a workaround to a problem that they soon forget that it's a problem that could be solved in a better way, right? And my firm belief is inventors, we truly do think different than the bulk of the population. Well, I don't even know what the percentages were, but maybe there's as much as 15 or 20% of the population that thinks, I wonder why it works that way. I wonder how it could be made better. Whereas everybody else says, it's the way it's always been, so it just is what it is. And it's funny that division between the one and the other, but I've seen this quite a few times that we just think differently and we don't see the standard circumstance as being necessarily the best solution to something, and we're always looking for better ways to do things.
Absolutely.
One quick question I wanted to ask regarding your StopGuard. So in the operating room, is that something that's added to the table afterwards, or how does it work in that environment?
Yep, that's a great question. So it is applied after the patient is on the table, and there's side rails that are on every OR table. And so you can stage the product ahead of time so it's ready to go when the patient comes into the room, and then it's a matter of just putting it into the right position, very much like a safety belt or a seat belt that we would use in surgery. So it's readily available. We can set it up ahead of time, and then within probably less than 2 seconds, it can provide the protection and safety support that it's meant to provide.
That makes so much sense. Can you share with our listeners the famous aha moment, the event that happened that caused you to invent the StopGuard? Can you think of a particular event or circumstance that made you say, we've got to do something about this?
Absolutely. I was working one evening and we had a patient that was having hip surgery. And after the surgery was over, the patient was coming out of anesthesia and they're moving around a little bit. And the nurse that was taking care of that patient in that room was an elderly nurse, very petite, maybe 100 pounds. And she was on the side of the bed. And that patient started to come off the bed. And it was up to her to save this patient from falling off the bed. And I happened to come in the room at that exact time and was able to assist her as well as somebody else. And I just thought there had to be a better way to make some kind of secondary layer of protection to prevent this in cases like this, because unfortunately they're rare, but it does happen and it is a risk. And so that right there was my aha moment. I thought there's got to be a better way to do this and keep the staff safe, keep the patients safe, and address all these issues that we're just not addressing now.
Thank you. I was just going to comment real quick that two of my sisters are RNs and they're retired from nursing at this point, and they were both in the operating room. But one of the things that every nurse faces is lifting, let's just say, heavy patients. And then ultimately, some point in their life, they're almost bound to have back pains or even back injuries because of not getting help to lift somebody heavy or what have you. Do you think have you seen that to be a problem?
Absolutely. And it is a big risk. Nurses are one of the top professions of back injuries and problems because it is a lot of manual heavy lifting. And I think, again, this product kind of eases into that to help the burden off nurses as far as it's one less stressor that we have to worry about in surgery. And then in this situation where this nurse was alone trying to catch this heavy patient, which would certainly lead into some type of back injury or injury to her, it is definitely a secondary guard to preventing back injury and just making the career a little less stressful and a little bit more efficient for those in it. And I think that's a big key to improving the healthcare industry is just taking care of the people that are in there that are doing the job.
I wanted to ask you, are there any unique challenges to successfully getting a medical device approved and then manufactured for use in the operating room? And did the StopGuard require special manufacturing methods? And what was the biggest challenge you faced with this product in that regard?
So I think when designing medical products, there's a lot of components that play into it. And keeping things cleanliness, clean and in the operating room is definitely a challenge because of the extra fluids and contaminants that are seen in the OR. We had to find the right material to manufacture it out of, and it had to be a non-porous, very stable, very sturdy material. We did have a huge challenge of trying to mill a long enough bore through the post that we used. And that took us several years to find the right manufacturer that could combine the right materials to provide an adequate service that we could clean, that was strong enough, that we could mill a long enough channel through it. There were several challenges to get it up to manufacturing specs that we needed to. And then as far as getting it into the market, we were able to tie it into some other products that they already sold and package it into it. So it would be a supportive product and work with that as well.
Thanks for describing that. And I was reflecting upon sometimes people think it's a trivial nomenclature to refer to ourselves as product developers instead of inventors. But truly, the process is product development because what it usually starts out in the beginning as and what it ultimately evolves to as a mature product are usually two different things.
That's very true. And a lot of it goes into knowing the industry and knowing the product and knowing what's going to work and what's not going to work. And it is more than just an idea. It's a whole circle of the needs that are being met. And going back to it's not only the design, but the kind of material that it needs to be made out of and what the different lengths and heights and what's going to make it a viable product. So it is much more product development versus just a idea or a concept or an invention. So I 100% agree with you, Alan.
I also like that you spoke to that some of the constraints was clearly clean and easy to clean up because of all the fluids and contaminants there are, as well as that the material really needed to be non-porous. And I think the reality is there's lots of fairly inexpensive materials, but they're porous. And so that probably drove you to some things that might have cost a bit more, but were absolutely essential. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, Alan. That was a big consideration. And again, you're working in an environment to reduce infections and to keep everybody safe. And so having the right materials that can facilitate that was key. And it was a bit of a challenge to have all those components that we needed to come together into a product that would fit into the OR and to the healthcare industry.
So listeners always like to hear the story of the path to commercialization because that's one of the biggest challenges just about every inventor has. Have you licensed the StopGuard or do you manufacture it? And also, basically, how have you commercialized this invention via licensing or manufacturing? Could you share that with us?
Absolutely, Alan. Yep. I was fortunate enough to have the product licensed by a company. And it was definitely a challenge. I talked to several different companies, and I think sometimes the challenge is that a lot of times they don't really understand the area that the product's going to be used in, or the need that is there from non-clinical people. And so you really have to paint a really good picture of how this product is going to benefit the company and benefit the patient, and where it's going to add value to it. So I did do a lot of presentations with the product to a lot of different manufacturers. And then I was able to onboard with a company that could see the vision of the product and thought it was a great fit for their company and a great fit for the market. So we worked through some design issues with them, and got it to exactly where we needed it to. And it's currently selling on the market now. And like I'd mentioned before, they were able to pair it with some of the products that they're currently manufacturing and selling. So it kind of complemented their product line as well. So far, it's been fairly successful. Like every new product, it's definitely a little challenging to get the word out there and get the recognition and to get the world to see it. But fortunately, it's been going well.
We hit on several key concepts I'd like to just expand just a bit for our listeners. You brought up getting them to see the vision. And I think this is really critically important because as inventors, we have a clear vision what the problem is and how our particular product solves it. But virtually everybody we're talking to, they don't. And in fact, one of the things that shocked me with a super simple product was they didn't even get the problem sometimes. And it just seems so obvious to us because we're fairly close to it. So sometimes part of what you have to do is share what the problem is in a real clear way where hopefully they won't argue against it. And then segue to saying, and this product is the perfect solution for you. And let me show you why, what it does. So getting them to be on board with seeing your vision and understanding the problem the same way you do, which I think that's something sometimes inventors don't recognize that that's going to happen. And then you will get a lot more no's than yeses. So it's a process.
Absolutely, Alan. I agree 100%. And again, going back to a lot of the people that I was pitching to, they weren't clinical people. And in fact, I don't think I talked to anyone that was ever actually or worked daily in the OR. So immediately there was a little bit of a challenge to overcome as far as getting them to relate and understand and to envision how this product is being used, why it is essential. And so I think a lot of it is just painting the picture and then having some supportive research to back that up so that the whole picture comes together. Because from a manufacturing standpoint, there's a lot of obvious products, but when you're bringing something that's a little bit newer into the product that does have a lot of benefits, but is not out there already, it does take a little bit of time and effort. And I think they really appreciate it. And coming from someone who's in the industry makes a big difference, because I think they trust your opinion. They believe in what you're telling them, and you can support the facts. And I think that it's across the industry and in all the areas. If you're pitching a kitchen product and you explain to that person why it's essential and what it's needed for and the problems, I think you have a much better chance of having them see your vision and understand the product and being successful.
So, James, as we roll towards a close, are there any parting words you'd like to leave us with?
I would. I've been inventing for basically my whole life, and it's definitely a very challenging and difficult road at times. I used to laugh. Sometimes it's not even trying to get a no, yes or no. It's just hearing back from them. It's a very lonely hobby. A lot of times it's a lot of dead ends and a lot of no's and a lot of letdowns. But I think if you stay focused and you really have to take every conversation and every setback and every failure to learn something from it. And inventing is a marathon. It's not a sprint, and little small progresses every day really is what adds up. And I feel like over time, you get better at it. You learn from every experience, and ultimately you can make it and you can make a difference. Continue to believe in yourself and continue to learn, and it'll pay off. So I just want to hope everybody's inspired by other people who have made it. And I believe that everybody can, as long as they stick with it and continue to learn and push forward.
You spoke to something that almost every inventor struggles with, and that is getting no answer, not a yes or a no. because they kind of hate to disappoint you. So they just leave it vague. That is interesting and this and that, but it's please just give me my no, right? A creative solution I found, and I've shared with some other inventors, or I like it, is you take a negative question and frame it in a positive way. So you could say something like, I'm definitely moving forward with this product. I appreciate your time today. I'm going to be approaching some other companies as well. But let me ask you, if this were your product, what would be your next step? It's a really creative way for them to subtly tell you what they see as either currently wrong or lacking or why it doesn't fit for them.
I really like when I go into a conversation with someone is I like to always try to have a plan going into it. So if I email a company and they email me back and they say, well, take a look at it. First of all, I like to get to the timeline and say, is it okay if I reach out to you in 2 weeks and ask you if you made a decision? And then I've even asked if it's not a product that is not right for them, but it's just to please let me know, because again, it is very frustrating not getting an answer and not maybe moved on, and you feel like you're kind of harassing them, emailing them all the time, and you're not getting anything back. So I think clear communication and just an understanding of where everybody's at is a great path to go. And you're trying to build connections with the company and a good rapport. And I think if you present yourself as a professional and understand and let them know that not every product that they see, they're going to accept or want, and you're okay with that. And it's not a personal thing. It's just not going to work out. So I think a lot of times if you can get past those barriers, then companies will be more open with you, and you can be more open with them, and you have a better relationship, and a long-term relationship is ultimately what you're striving for as an inventor, is to be respected, and they understand that you respect them, and it's reciprocated as well. So
I think that's a great answer. I think one of the greatest fears a lot of these companies have is the inventor saying, oh, please, I can change it. I can make this. I can make it that. And it's, oh, geez, can you not accept a no?
absolutely. When I get to that point, they come back with a rejection. I usually just follow up one time and say, is there something that we change, or maybe give some support to the reason why they didn't reject it. But then after the second time, I value our relationship more than I value trying to push a product, because I'd rather have that company or individual respect me as an inventor. And there's a good chance in the near future, I'll have another product form, or I have some other idea. And I'd rather keep that path of communication open than to be that person who keeps trying to push it and then they get irritated and you cut off your connection. So I think that's extremely important, is to know where your boundaries are and respect them.
James, my final question then is, how can our listeners reach you if they have other questions or would like to find out more?
Yeah, absolutely. They can email me at james.siedlack, it's SIEDLACK at prnproducts.com, and products is PRODUCTS. I'd be happy to help anybody or answer any questions if I'm able to.
And just repeat that back. It's james.siedlack, SIEDLACK, at prnproducts.com. Did I get that right?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Oh, super. Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate you being on the podcast with us today and sharing your journey, the challenges you had in bringing this product out and solving a problem that was others just hadn't seen at that time. And I'd like to reserve the opportunity, maybe another 6 months or a year, to catch up with you again and find out what you've got going on at that time.
Absolutely, Alan. It was a pleasure being on your show. I thank you for it. And I'd be more than happy to be on your podcast again and let you know how things are going and any updates I have, and maybe some more inspiring information for your listeners.
Yeah. Once again, thanks a lot for being on the podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for tuning in to Inventors Helping Inventors. If you like the show, please tell your friends about it. Make sure to subscribe in iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts so you won't miss a single episode. Talk to you soon.